Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Hello, and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. On the show today, this month, I have Steve Jones. I've known Steve for a long time. Longer than we'll probably care to remember. We were high school cadets together. We went to different high schools together, but we both worked in Montgomery County, and we both retired out of Montgomery County. So with that being said, Steve, welcome to the show, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's definitely been a few years since we started back in, I think it was 83 or 82, somewhere around there as a cadet.
I'm gonna say 85 is when we started in the cadet class, because we graduated in 86.
Yeah, but I just remember we were in class 84 for the EMT. So
it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's more than a few years. So yeah, like you said, I started as a high school cadet, and where we got our Fire 1 and 2 and EMT and a few other little classes and stuff like that. And then I was, at the time, I was a volunteer at Tacoma Park Volunteer Fire Department, where my dad was a firefighter, so I'm a second generation. And from there, I got hired in 86 and worked for just a month or two short of 30 years with Montgomery County Fire Rescue. At the same time, I was in between there, I was a volunteer in Prince George's County, Kentland. Since then, I moved over to the Eastern Shore, where I'm a volunteer in Queen Anne's County, where we run our 300 to 400 calls a year. And my latest retired job is I work for Dover City. I'm sorry, the city of Dover in Delaware as their fire administrator.
So congrats on that. Like we were talking about online, that's a new position. Now, I'm going to take you back a little bit. You're a second generation firefighter. It's in the family. It was the same with me, third generation between my dad and my grandfather. We both started as volunteers in Montgomery County. I started over in Burtonsville, which was on the northeastern side of the county, and you were on the southeastern side of the county in Tacoma. So take me back. When you were younger, your dad was a volunteer in Tacoma. What was your earliest memories of being in the fire department? What do you remember about Station 2, and then what made you decide that, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Oh, I mean, the department was a big deal. It was still back in the time where they did have some city employees that actually before the county took over. So they had city employees, and then they went to the county, and they still had a lot of home response. We only lived 2 blocks away from the firehouse, so we could hear the house siren. My dad, of course, would go up there and get the second or third piece out. So I still remember that, and you still have the every year they had the 4th of July, so there was a big deal with the parade and the fireworks and everything else like that. So we were always hanging around the firehouse, and it was back then. It was more of a family thing because everybody didn't have to work so much and have second jobs and everything like that. So once he got home, he would spend his nights and weekends up there, and you would do up there for football parties and stuff like that. And so it was definitely something that was part of my life, early life. And then I was hooked with it because I would go to the drills and watch them and try to do whatever I could do without getting myself in trouble, and so I was hooked on the bug real early in my life.
And that's kind of the way it was for me. I joined Greenbelt as a junior member, and talked about it on the show many times. My dad and grandfather were members there, and they took 12-year-olds, 12 to 16, as junior members in PG County, and I did that and we had moved to Montgomery County when I was like 5 or 6 years old, but Montgomery County didn't have a junior program like that, so I did my time at Greenbelt. When I turned 16, I joined Burtonsville, so it was in the blood as well. And funny story, I remember when once I joined Burtonsville, all I wanted to do was the high school cadet program. When I knew that was there, that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a career firefighter when I was in seventh grade. Um, but joining Burtonsville and in the high school cadet program, and the funny thing is because I have a late birthday and you are a year older than I am, I remember I was paying you to drive me to the high school cadet class. Do you remember that?
I do, just enough to cover the gas.
Right. I think it was like $6 or something like that. But the funny thing is that, basically from second grade on, I was from Burtonsville, which was, Spencerville, which was kind of like a one horse town. And, we barely ran we didn't even run 1,000 calls when I was there. And I remember leaving the academy and you took me into Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. I'd never been there before. To me, it was like you were taking me to the big city. And of course, that's where you grew up. And, it was like I was in awe, like, wow, this is like the big city. And then, fast forward, I got hired in 87. Like I said, I had a late birthday. So I got hired in 87 and was assigned to Silver Spring. And I've told people 1,000 times, that was like, I was big city fireman, with high rises and all that stuff. We didn't have anything like that in Burtonsville. But you were the first person that took me down to that end of the county. I had never been there before. Never knew anything about Tacoma or Silver Spring. So I fondly remember that. And then, being actually getting hired in Silver Spring. And when you got hired through the corporation like I did. You were hired in Silver Spring also, correct?
I was originally, because I worked casual labor for a short time, and then I was picked up by Sandy Spring as casual labor, and then they picked me up as an employee. But I didn't even finish my probationary year before an opening came at Silver Spring. So then I transferred to Silver Spring, where I stayed for um, most of my career has been in Silver Spring, Tacoma Park. But yeah, and it's funny. I was lucky to be there because it was, it wasn't hell's 100 acres, but it definitely they saw their fire. They got to see some pretty neat stuff because you're right there on the Prince George's County line and you're right on against DC. So you did have a little bit of run over there, and so it was a great area because it had a little of everything.
And that was what I remember so much about that when getting hired at one engine. And I knew, I guess you had come over probably maybe right before I got hired. You were in Silver Spring because I remember you and we worked together. I think we were actually on the same shifts, just different stations. I know we had worked a couple of times. A couple of kids. Like I'd said many times, I was pure entertainment for the guys at one engine. Being an 18-year-old hyperactive kid. But you know, what better way to get introduced to the fire department than in the mid '80s? They weren't burning like they were in the '70s, but running high rise fires. I mean, people would go their whole career and never even see a high rise fire. And I would say, like, yeah, we'd run like 4 a year, and I just thought that was normal. Coming from Burtonsville to Silver Spring, I say, hey, that's just what they do. But when you tell people the things that we did, the things that we saw, they were like, I don't want to say in awe, but they just couldn't believe the amount of experience that we gathered at such a young age in that particular area. So I've always said I was lucky. I did casual labor at Gaithersburg Station 8 for a month when before Chief Grover hired me at Station 1. So and I did like 7 years there before I got promoted. So I was there, and First Battalion, as you know, and I've said it 1,000 times. The First Battalion is one of those places where you either love it or you hate it. There's never any of this. Well, it's okay. And I tell people, they'd either be couldn't wait to get out of there, or if they got promoted and they left, they worked their whole career to get back. And that's where I was fortunate. Born, volunteered, hired, and retired in the First Battalion. So that holds a special place in my heart.
Oh, I was the same way. I mean, I just absolutely love it because, like I said, it had everything. You had some really nice houses, and you had some really bad houses, and you had high rises. You had a lot of commercial. So you got so much experience, and it wasn't, it was every day was an adventure, or you were definitely, learning something every day. And you even had that and it was great at Silver Spring and Tacoma Park because those people down there, I mean, just knew the job and they knew how important it was because I mean, it's such a small area. I mean, the firehouses are only, a mile and a half away from each other. So you had to be on your game at all times, because if you took a wrong turn or messed up, did anything little, you were third or fourth due by then. So you were out of the game, because I mean, it was the king of room and contents fires. And, every once in a while you get something a little bigger, or, something that goes unnoticed. But, for the most part, everything was quick and, down and dirty.
And I know, and I've said it before on the show, but it was one of those areas, with 2, 1, 16, and 19, all within a mile or 2 miles apart. And like you said, if you sneezed, if you were caught on the toilet or in the shower, or you took a wrong turn, you would go from first to third in your own first due area. And the cool thing was, it was a huge rivalry. I mean, it was a pride thing, but I mean, we got along. There was no fist fights in the yard or anything like that. But I do remember, and I tell people, the Piney Branch Road to Flower Avenue corridor, where 1, 2, and 16 come together. It was always a race to who would get there first. And that it was back in the day where when you beat somebody in, you definitely let them know. And a little hard feelings, but we got over it. But it was one of those, you could be on the winning end, the first one call, and then the next box alarm, you'd be on the losing end.
Yeah, and just like you said, it was a friendly rivalry. But you give them a wink, or you give them a smile and a wave, because you didn't want to rub it in too much, because every dog has its day. And the next shift, like you said, if you take that wrong turn or do something that you shouldn't have done, then they're going to be laughing at you. So you got to watch yourself.
And it was a good place, especially with the mutual aid, going into Prince George's County, that upper part, that east side of Prince George's County, in the Chillimadelphi area and down Mount Rainier and Brentwood, back when those companies were running. So we definitely got our share of work between Montgomery and PG County. Every now and then we'd sneak into DC, but it was definitely the place to be. So how many years did you do in Silver Spring before you got promoted? And you went from firefighter to master, right? You didn't skip over, correct?
Yes, I was actually got master pretty quickly. I was lucky enough to study real hard for that test, and I only had just over 3 years on the job. And just like you said, I fought to get back. So I spent a little time bouncing around the county, because when I first got promoted, they sent me to Kensington on day work for a short time, because they had the positions, but then they didn't have the spots available yet. So I spent a short time there, and then they moved me way up north into Station 9. Luckily, I was only there for like 6 months before somebody at Station 1 actually wanted to trade with me. So I got lucky enough to come back to Station 1. But here I was, that 21, 22-year-old guy coming back there, and everybody on my shift was 30 years or older. So it was an eye-opening experience, but it was fun. And I some of the best times was then. And I spent the next 7 or 8 years as a master at Station 1 until the ladder truck went out of service. And so when they took Tower 1 out of service, then I got moved down to Station 2. And I served a little bit there before I got promoted to lieutenant. And then I had to go to communications for 2 years and 9 days and like 3 hours. So, but who's counting? But then I was lucky enough to return back to Station 2 as a lieutenant. And I stayed there until I got promoted to captain. And then I went to where your old home was in Burtonsville for a little while. And then from there, I went up to work under Phil Gercio as the operations captain at the time, up there on the 12th floor. And after I did my time there, it was like, well, okay, you get to pick where you want to go. And I just got lucky again and was back down to Station 2 as a captain. So I basically served every rank at Station 2 before I finally got promoted to battalion chief. And then I was sent to Battalion 2 there again for just over 2 years, because you had to do your 2 years in it. And then I was lucky enough to go back to 1. So I was the Battalion 1, guy for a while until, and I did that for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and then got moved to Battalion 3 for a short stint before I got promoted to the shift chief. So then that was my end of being in Battalion 1, even though I spent most of my time down that way. But there was no opening for any person at that rank then.
Yeah, that was once you're the shift chief, you're just tied to that position, and you were tied to the county, and it's you were fortunate that you got to spend so much time in the first. And, I did my 7 years as a firefighter before I decided to take the master's test, and when I got promoted, being on the dive team, they moved me up to 29. I was there for a year, and they ended up moving me to station 18. Because they didn't have the room for me. They thought they were going to move more divers up to 29, but they didn't. So I ended up going to 18. And I tell you, the year that I spent at 18, that was like a mini Battalion 1, because it was just me and another master, and then you had all the volunteers, but they were just so young, like probably 5, 6, 7 years younger than I was. Some just out of high school, and it was me herding those cats, and the cool thing about Station 18 at Glenmont is Kensington had 4 stations, and none of the stations liked the volunteers at Glenmont, so it was a good fit. We were hated because we were aggressive, we were fast, we were getting into other people's area. So I enjoyed my time there, and then Chief Fitch ended up telling me one day, hey, they're putting a lot more people up at 29. We're going to send the divers up there, and you're going to go. And I looked at the shift that I was going to, and I think originally it was like A shift. And he was showing me he was on A shift, and I saw B shift, and that was like Gallo and Freeman, all the cool guys, a lot of Battalion 1 guys. And I said, wow, I'd really like to go to B shift. Fitz says, you want to go to B shift? Erased my name off of A shift and penciled it into B shift. And I did about 18 months at 29 before I got promoted to lieutenant, but had a good time up there. It wasn't as busy as we wanted it to be, but definitely working, with Bob, Bob Freeman, but with Gallo,
Yep.
who ended up being kind of a mentor for me, moving through the ranks as lieutenant, captain, and then eventually making battalion chief. But yeah, I didn't get to spend as much time in the first battalion as I wanted to. I bounced around quite a bit like you did, but I wasn't quite as lucky as you were. So you made shift chief. Obviously, what were some of the struggles that we'll talk about battalion chief? Because going from the front seat to basically driving yourself, what kind of challenges did you find with that, or did you enjoy it, or what did you think about moving from tactics to strategies?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult, because you move to that position as a battalion chief, and somebody once told me you're the hammer of the department now. So you're the one. You're no longer one of them. You're not part of the group anymore. You're the outsider, kind of looking in. But I mean, that was a little bit of a struggle. But as long as you treat people right, and you treat them like you wanted to be treated, and I was lucky enough to have some of those people that that tell me this when I got promoted through the different ranks. It was like, when you're going to discipline somebody, or when you're going to go find out what's going on, put yourself on the other side of that table and make sure that you ask the right questions, and you let them tell the whole story before you start passing judgments and everything like that. So as long as you treated people that way, you were welcomed. There was obviously some things that you wanted to change or make better, and that's one of the reasons why I got promoted. I had people come to me and say, "Hey, if you want to make a change, you got to get a bigger piece of pie. If you're just a captain, you're one of 125 people. Even a battalion chief, you're one of 30 people in Montgomery County. You have to keep going up and get a bigger slice of the pie if you want to make changes." And unfortunately, I listened to that and took a couple more promotions, and but each time you stayed with your values, and you stayed with how you wanted to be treated, and it seemed to work. And it was a lot of things that you struggle to get through, and it every firefighter hates two things: change and the way things are. So you got to ride that fine in between, and pick your battles, pick your time to to change something and make it better as you see fit.
One of the things that I found, when I got promoted to lieutenant, there wasn't a lot of training to be a lieutenant. It was, you're a master. Every now and then, maybe you got bumped over to ride the seat, but for the most part, you were driving. And then you take the test, you get on the list. Next, you get the phone call. Hey, congratulations, you're getting promoted to lieutenant. Good job. And then they send you off to a station. Hoping that you're going to a busy station, but there was really no training to be an officer. It was mostly like on the job training. And I think we struggled with that. I know they've done a lot better. I had Raphael Gibson on here last month and talked about the things that they're doing at the academy now. But, when I got promoted, like when you got promoted, it was one of those, you kind of emulated what you saw as a master, what that lieutenant was doing, hoping that lieutenant was doing it right. And when I got promoted to lieutenant, I went to 6, and Mike Close was my captain, but he was detailed to the training academy for the recruit class. So I was on my own. So I literally went from having a captain and a lieutenant to being a lieutenant at a dual service house, being the only officer. So I definitely relied on John Gallo, calling him up, asking him how to do stuff. But I really felt alone. Luckily the guys that were at 6 were pretty decent. But I did that for a handful of years and then moved on to captain, and I felt I was ready for captain and moved down to Glen Echo. So it was more of an administrative stuff that needed to happen in Glen Echo. It wasn't very busy, but I enjoyed my time there, believe it or not. But that was one of the things that I talk about a lot is, we're not preparing our officers to be officers. It has definitely gotten better. When I made battalion chief, we did have that training. I think when I made battalion chief, you were already the shift chief. And like you said, it was one of those, you got the whole speech of, all right, you're not one of the guys anymore, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And to me, that was kind of sad. I was the relief chief, so I was floating between the 2 battalions, the 1st and the 4th. But I made it a habit. I definitely went to all the stations, and I made it a habit to talk to everybody. Maybe I wasn't part of that particular shift, but I felt comfortable going in there and just talking to the fellas. So I didn't find it that isolating when I was a battalion chief that I didn't feel like I know I wasn't one of the guys, and you didn't want to overstay your welcome. But like you said, you just treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat them like adults. Allow them to make decisions. They make mistakes. We learn from them. I remember specifically with you, your personality. You were one of those. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, and when you saw your battalion chiefs not treating people the way they should be treated, you held them accountable. You actually pulled them aside, and if I remember correctly, you actually made a battalion chief apologize for his actions or his demeanor towards his people, and that was pretty humbling. The story that I heard, and it goes to show that that old school officer mentality of you treat everybody like adults, treat them how you want to be treated. And if you are in a position where people aren't doing that, then you have an obligation to correct that behavior. Does that all that ring a bell from you?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's everybody wants to go to the busiest stations or the places that catch the most fire and stuff like that. I think it's more important, like you said, to look at where you're going and who you're working with and stuff like that, because that's the bigger element. And not to say that everybody has to be, the greatest firefighters in the world and stuff like that, because you can work on that and you can train that, and you'd be surprised how many people that they might get labeled something that's not good, or that they have some issues or something like that. But when you sit down there and you learn the different ways to treat people or to, work with people, they'll change. And again, if you treat them, like you said, as an adults, they'll be surprise you every once in a while and do some good things. It's funny because I had so many good people that I worked for, and like you said, there wasn't any of these great training. You had officership 1 and officership 2, and you take some of these little seminars and stuff like that, and it was all good knowledge and stuff that you could use. But watching somebody, some of the great officers that you had, you mentioned like the Fitches and the LeMays, and there's just so many of these great people that you watched, and it made things easier for you because then you could take that. Now, were they perfect all the time, or were you perfect all the time? No, but you learn from it, and that was one of my big things because I always, wherever I went at every rank, I always had like a list of, hey, these are what I expect of you, and you make sure that you put that in writing and you show them that, hey, this is what I expect of you. And one of the big things on that thing was, it's okay to make a mistake. It's, if it happens once, we look at it, we correct it, and we move on. Now, if you start having that same mistake over and over again, that's not a mistake anymore. Now that becomes a problem. So then we have to go to a different angle or a different way of approaching this kind of thing like that. And it was regardless of the rank, or because you had it at every level. One of the other good things too that I try to push onto the people was always train 2 people to replace you, and always have a mentor or 2 to look up to, and they don't have to be on your shift. Like you said, you could make a phone call or you could talk over these things with other people, and it just seems like it solves itself at that point. You're passing on that information. And that was one of the other things too, especially when I became Battalion 1. I was big on learning from our mistakes, and I stand by this to this day. I've been doing it for way too many years, but I've never been on a perfect fire. There's always something that you could do better, and so I'd always take every event and I would capture the event with a picture or 2, and then I would write down 3 or 4 good things and 3 or 4 bad things and a little narrative. And then I would send out that to everybody, in the battalion. So even if it was a fire in Tacoma Park or a fire up in Burtonsville or whatever else, and it didn't have to be a fire. It could be anything. It could be an MCI or something that you learn from, and you pass that information on. And it does 2 good things for you. And everybody learns from that. So they say, hey, we had this roll down door and it was easier to do it this way versus this way. Or, we had this problem with the triage tags or whatever the problem was. But everybody learns from it. And then it also stops the people, hey, did you hear what those idiots at Station X did? And it's like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And that kind of stuff just pushed on. And I know they carried it even further along, and they're doing, like you said, all kinds of great things up there between the officer candidate schools that they've been running, for quite a few years, to the media events and to the PIAs and looking over our events and learning from them. And everybody has their problems and everything, and has to work through them, but sitting there and learning from your mistakes and other people's mistakes, it just makes a better department.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. It's one of the things you said is that when people they want to play that armchair quarterback, and they'll add information that wasn't true, or I heard this or I heard that, but to be open and honest with, hey, we ran this call, we did some good stuff, we did some stuff that we need to improve on, and you make that open to the masses where everybody can see it, being transparent. It takes all the wind out of the sails for all the people that want to be armchair quarterbacks or keyboard warriors. So I think that the transparency of hey, we're not perfect, we made a mistake. How did we recover? Did we recover? What are we going to do the next time that this happens? It's all of learning from what happened and then how we move forward. I think we did that really well in Montgomery County. They do it really well in Frederick. We're working on making sure that we're getting hot washes done after incidents and things like that, so we can grab the officers right away and talk to them, as opposed to, hey, we're going to do a PIA in a couple of weeks, and now you got to kind of have to recall what you did, as opposed to when it's fresh in your mind, knock it out right then and there, on the back step. And, you may have to have something formal later, depending on the size of the incident. But I think there's value to gain from every incident that you run, because like you said, I've never been to a fire that wasn't perfect. We always make mistakes, and I was always my own worst critic. Every fire that I ran, I would always get a copy of the audio so I could listen to it to make sure, did I sound okay? Did I miss something? Should I have done this instead? To make sure that when I run that next fire, I'm fixing what I think I should have done the first time. You know, there's nothing worse than sitting in your vehicle watching the guys go to work, saying that I'm putting them in harm's way. Everything that I'm doing, I hope they are, going to get the job done. I was fortunate that we worked with really good people, and that happened. People did their job, and we had good outcomes. But you definitely would like to be in there with them as opposed to sitting in the car. So it was kind of a different transition. But so you did your battalion chief. You moved on to shift chief, so you're getting a bigger piece of the pie. You actually ended up you went from having 75 to 78 people you were responsible for to just about 300, if I remember correctly. So what was that like running as the shift chief, and how did things change, and how did you look at the fire service at that point?
I tried to carry the same values, the same ideas. Like you said, it definitely made it grow. Um, and I got to experience, more of the upper county stuff. I mean, I did a short stint, like I said, as Battalion 3, and I worked up county a little bit, but nowhere near what I had to do. So, and it was funny because the first 5 battalion chiefs I had were pretty, different. So you had to, teach or learn from them in different ways, and speak to them in different ways, and work through the issues and stuff like that, but still maintain the same ideas and stuff like that, and was pushing forward for making sure that they're all working together, that everybody's running the calls the exactly same way. Because it's funny, you give somebody an SOP and say, okay, do this, unless you're practicing it or making sure that they're doing it correctly on all the levels, you'd be surprised. It's like playing the telephone game where you're pantsing, that information along, and by the time it gets to the end, it's completely different from what it started out as. So we were, again, reviewing incidents and doing all kinds of stuff like that, and making sure that the training was going across. So I would challenge the battalion chiefs to come up with some training with whatever their specialty was. Your battalion 2, so you were more into the hazmat side, so come up with some hazmat drills and stuff like that, and work that around. It wasn't much different, but it was, even as a battalion chief, you ran a call, and 90% of them were pretty bread and butter, follow the SOP, knock it down, go for the, but then there was that every once in a while where you'd like to have somebody at your back. And that's where that shift chief was. That person would show up and, most of the time just pat you on the back, say good job, or you could have done this better, or whatever else. And every once in a while they'd have to sit next to you and give you, a second set of eyes or ears to, make sure you're doing it correctly. Well, now you're that guy. So you have to then go, do that. And, so that was a little eye opening. And then also you had to, you're basically the fire chief for that 24 hours, for the county. I mean, obviously there is a fire chief and, the rest of the senior staff up there, but you're the one they're going to look at, if there's an issue where, whether it be you're shutting 270 down for a huge gas leak, or you're burning 75 acres, up county, or, whatever the problem was, you're the one that's going to have to answer and make sure that the right information is being pushed out to everybody else, and the things are going on. So you worked with those people, and the good thing is that we had a good relationship with the 5 battalion chiefs and the EMS officers, the safety guy. They were always the same people. So they were all had the same message. And again, you had that expectations that you put down in writing and went to all those people. So they knew where you were coming from and what you're looking for, and as long as you followed that and you treated them right, there usually wasn't any problem. Now, obviously there's some problems here or there, but that's what you get paid to do, is to fix those problems. And you just try to minimize that and go from there. So again, getting all that information, helped us change our SOPs, because, we're getting these, the Maydays or whatever else, we're reviewing them, and you look at that, or the command and competency classes, or, the review that you had to do. Those are all based on our actual incidents and stuff like that, and what we were going to change. So again, those are the things that you could do, and which I was lucky enough to, be a big part of.
One of the things that you said about being that second chief, we're running the 2 battalion chiefs on the full assignments in Montgomery County. They're doing the same thing in Frederick. They're running 2 battalion chiefs, and having that second chief in the car, even if the person's a little less experienced than you are, it was more of a comfort thing. And of course, we had volunteers that were coming in. We get volunteers in the vehicles with it. We had some really good volunteer chief officers that ran as the second chief in the car. Sometimes they were the first ones, and we were the second chief in the car. But being able to work together as a team, because we didn't have aides, so it was that second set of eyes, a second head to bounce stuff off of. And I remember when, as the battalion chiefs, we had the shift chiefs that would come up, and it was usually one of those, they'd come up to the window and said, "Well, it sounds like you have everything under control. You need anything from me?" type thing, and that was always comforting to hear. It was never like, "This is a shit show, and I'm getting in the car right now, and we need to fix this." So it was never that way. I was fortunate enough for that, because we had that second chief in the car, to be able to iron some stuff out. I remember a call we ran down on East-West Highway in 1 inch there. It was the townhouses that were right across from Summit Hills. And we ended up having, I want to say we had a good running roof fire, or attic fire. So we had fire in 3 townhouses. And the second chief got in the car with me, and we were trying to get our hands around it. We didn't even have time to start writing down on the tactical worksheet, because we're trying to get people in the townhouses as we moved, to try to get ahead of this stuff. And Goldstein, obviously, is the fire chief. He was always out riding around. Well, he shows up, and he's getting ready to get in the car. And I knew right away he was going to be taking a look at our tactical worksheet. Where are all the people at? He was going to ask these questions. So as soon as he was getting in the car, I said, "Chief, I hate to do this to you." I said, "Can you take a quick lap for me and tell me what it looks like on the rear?" And and I said, "Can you draw a map?" So he gets out of the car and he goes and does his thing. And the second chief looks at me and he goes, "I already did a circle check." I said, "Dude, we got about 5 minutes to get our shit together before he gets back in the car." And he came back. He had a nice map drawn up and everything, showed where all the units were. By that time, we had all the tactical worksheet was all cut up, and you can see him looking over our shoulder. He goes, "All right, well, it sounds like everything's good." He said, "I'm going to go out and, I think the press is coming. I'll go talk to them." So having that second chief in the car, to be able to just be that second set of eyes and be that second hand, had I not had that, I would have totally been behind the 8 ball. And, so having that that third chief that comes up, that senior staff member that can kind of, you need help, you need something, I can take some more stuff off your hands type thing. That's what I always viewed the shift chief as, is that person that's coming in to kind of take some of that stuff off of us, like relocating the people, getting a bus there if we need to put firefighters on the bus, or the citizens or whatever, kind of taking a look at that. I'm at the 10,000 foot level, and that shift chief's at the 50,000 foot level, making sure that everything on the incident is good. So that was valuable, having that type of chief coming on the scene. So we definitely had some good shift chiefs that spent a lot of time in the ranks, and they weren't too green. So that I thank you for.
Yeah, and you're right. And And you did bring up a good valid point that, that we did. It wasn't just the 5 battalion chiefs and the rest of the thing. There was a lot of really, really good command volunteer officers out there that did well. And there was some that were shaky, just like there were some that were shaky on the career side that needed some extra help or whatever else like that. Um, so, and the other element of that, having those 2 battalion chiefs, like you said, if it's something that's pretty severe, or it's going to go to the multiple alarms, or that's a big mass casualty or something like that, you could get that person there. Or, most of the time it seemed like I was either going inside and becoming a division or a group officer or whatever else, or I was telling that other person to go do that. It gave you options, because that, hey, maybe the shift chief's not going to be that far behind me. So if I truly need it, I'd really like to have, because as we only have, for most of our career, it was only 3 people on the engine until we got our 4th, but we still only have 3 on the truck. So adding something to that unit officer as being a division officer, sometimes might not be the best thing to do, because they got other things to do. So you might want to get that that chief in there. So, and we had that option, to play around or to do what we needed to do. So it was great to learn it that way, and it was great to, we were in that group of, where everything came inside the vehicle, where it wasn't the person standing out front of the building or running out of the back of a unit, because you just can't imagine how well I think the incidents run from being inside the vehicles now. And we obviously know it works, because I had countless other fire departments, big city fire departments, that would come down and to see how we're doing it, because they've heard about it, and now it seems like it's the norm.
Yeah, and that's a discussion that we talk about quite often. I have a lot of friends up in the Northeast, and they still run their command, either out of the back of the vehicle or outside of the vehicle with a briefcase type tactical worksheet and all that stuff. But in the Mid-Atlantic area, and I would say definitely in the NCR, or National Capital Region, we are in the vehicle sterile cockpit type of command, and that played a lot of that. That was very valuable, seeing it done both ways. We came up through the ranks as volunteers, whatever, where the volunteer chiefs used to be outside of the vehicles running those calls with their Taranac gear on, their portable radio in their hand, walking around the fireground, until we recognized that, if we get inside the vehicle, we keep the windows up, we reduce those distractions. It's easier to concentrate on the radio, to see what's going on, and to communicate with whoever's in the vehicle with you. So I'm with you. I'm an in the vehicle kind of guy, window up, and running command that way. And like I said, some people still run command from the outside. They still run command in Baltimore County, which is the next county over from where I am here. They still run command from the outside. To each their own. But I definitely found that value of being inside the vehicle with the windows up, the doors closed, that minimize distractions on the fireground. So,
And like you said, on the you take the time and you listen to the tapes and stuff like that, and if you run a couple outside of the thing, you'll find out how many things you miss on the radio and stuff like that. So once you get, like you said, get into that sterile environment, roll the windows up, and you still have people walking up to the window. They'll tap on the window. You just give them the finger, the pointer finger, not the other finger, and make sure that, hey, give me a second. But it also does something else to it. It forces you to use the radio. And not that you need to talk your fires out, just enough to get the information out there. Like if you want to tell somebody, hey, I need a second line up on the roof, or I need this or whatever else, it forces you to do the radio, where in the old days you would just yell at the officer as they ran by you. And that's great that you're getting it done, but nobody else knows where those people are. And by saying it on the radio, it gives them an opportunity to hear, hey, they just sent another line to the roof, or, what's going on, so everybody knows about that. And like I said, it just makes it such a cleaner fire ground. Because when I first started doing it as the battalion chief, it was still a little bit outside, but now, and where that guy is, And there's always somebody that's on the fire ground that wants to know where the chief is, whether it be, like you said, for family reunification or whatever else like that. They can point right to the green light or the vehicle, and go from there. Because if the person's wandering around, then they're spending more time on the radio trying to find that person. So it's definitely got its advantages.
Yeah, and you bring up, the tapping on the window or whatever, the guys in Montgomery County, we got disciplined to the point where when that second chief's in the vehicle, you go to the passenger side and that person's going to be the gatekeeper. My guys knew when I was running in the first, was one of those, if I'm in the vehicle by myself, if you feel you need to tell me something, you tell me on the radio. And that did two things. It either was, all right, I'll tell you on the radio because it's important, or, well, it's not that important that I need to say it on the radio, which means it probably wasn't important enough to knock on my window and interrupt what we were doing. So it really forced those guys to ensure that the communications that were being done was critical information as opposed to just frivolous crap that could be handled without having to say it on the radio. But yes,
and that was the other cool thing. I was going to say, and that's the other cool thing about being inside the vehicle is that, you have the multiple radios. So you got the talk around channel playing behind you. So you can hear the chatter that you want, the unofficial chatter that you want to hear or don't want to hear. You can listen to the other channel. Plus you have your resources of, your MDC or your pre-plans or, your, what's it called? Lineup sheets. And, there's so much more that you have to offer as a chief officer when you're sitting inside that vehicle.
Absolutely. And Montgomery County has come so far, as has Frederick. We've changed up the way we've done a lot. We're doing a lot of stuff in Frederick and larger counties, smaller footprint of career and volunteer, being a combination system. But the amount of things, we have 3 battalion chiefs, and the amount of things that need to be covered is the same wherever you go for any chief officer. But they've got, they could be in the vehicle by themselves for a long time because, the travel distance between areas and chiefs and things like that. So, my hat's off to the battalion chiefs in Frederick because they're in charge, in command for quite a long time before that second chief gets there. But so I want to fast forward a little bit. So you finished up your time as the assistant chief, the shift chief, and you moved into deputy chief of operations. So tell me what that was like, and what was it? One of those, hey Steve, I need you to take the test because I really need you here, or was I'm going to take the test and wherever I land is where I land?
Yeah, I mean there was a little bit of push by some of the senior people that have either retired or were around me that said, hey, you would do good there. Let's try to work that through. And it was very interesting, definitely eye opening. It's funny, as you go up in ranks, the people that are, don't want to be around you because they don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or whatever else. But I always still carried my battalion thing because I always hit every station every day, even if it was midnight by the time I can get around to it. But I still try to every day go out at lunchtime and go to pick a station and go sit down there at lunchtime. And I would wait because the first couple times I did it, I would get there right at 11:30 or 11:45 or whatever, and I'd sit down and nobody would sit next to you. It was always going to be a seat between you and everything because everybody would be on the other side of the table and everything like that. So I learned that I had to go a little later. That way I can just squeeze in. And sometimes it was conversations about the fire department. Sometimes it was personal stuff or whatever else. But it gave them a time to speak. And a lot of people just want to be heard. They get that stuff off their chest and and come up with these. Some of the great ideas that we've done in the department has been from the people that they're doing the job. So that gave me an opportunity to escape from the 12th floor or the second floor at the new place. But it was interesting, and then you got a really big piece of pie now. So if you're going to change stuff, and I did get to do some pretty cool things. We started on the whole new response policy, and we changed the way the rapid intervention was done, and we moved that back and stuff like that because of the stuff that we did and the stuff that we, like you said, we're transparent for. Because I couldn't remember what the number of Mayday or emergency type situations where we had, and it showed that it wasn't the RIC company that was doing so much; it was that guy or girl behind the second dude that was pulling the people out, or the people around them and stuff like that. So we found it more important to, yes, put the team in service, but it was more important to get that first and second line in service, and then the third and fourth line in service, before you got to that point. Just stuff like that, that really made you feel good.
And I remember one of the last things I think you did before you left. We had the new fire engines coming in. We were transitioning away from the Crimsons or whatever they were into the Pierces, and we ended up changing our hose packages and stuff like that. So you're instrumental in that. You kind of gave us the freewheel of let's change the way we were going to load our hoses. I think he was like, this is the third and final rendition. I remember the day that we got to get rid of the pistol grips. I called you up. I think I actually sent you an email of a mailman with a pistol grip nozzle in his hand and just said, it's time. And you let me take the pistol grips off all the fire engines. But and then we eventually transitioned to that 1.5-inch hose. But so you got to do a lot of big changes. And as the ops chief, you mentioned one thing about, going and talking to the people and getting off out of headquarters. I found it very valuable to make sure that as a battalion chief, I hit every station in my battalion every shift. I'd leave at 10. I'd be back by 4:30, spend about 15, 20 minutes in each firehouse, a little longer if we were talking about stuff. But I made it a habit to make sure that I hit every firehouse because I felt it was important just to lay eyes and see what's going on and find out what's, any bad rumors that are going around or, any information. A lot of those guys have information before we have the information. But what I found was that the firefighters and the officers in the stations want to see the chiefs, believe it or not. A lot of chiefs feel that, I don't want to see us, we're not welcome there. But believe it or not, they like having the FaceTime of, the senior staff, the assistant chiefs, the deputy chiefs. They see that they should be seeing the battalion chief every day. But having that FaceTime routinely, not every day, but routinely, definitely made the fire service, again, transparent, what was going on. You could actually give them information of things that are happening at a higher level that they may not hear. But the other thing is that it made the firefighters and the officers feel a lot more comfortable when the senior staff would pop in and just sit down and say, hey, because you remember the whole saying was, what did we do wrong? And it's like, well, why do you think every time I come in here, you did something wrong? That's the only time you come here. So we changed that mentality of I'm not here because you did something wrong. I'm here because what's going on, guys, type of thing. So I've often said you're not too big of an organization that you can't get FaceTime with your subordinates. As you start moving into these larger city departments, DC, New York, whatever, yeah, it might be difficult to get the chief into every station, but have video, something where they can see what is going on and hear what's going on, and then start trying to go out and chip away at a battalion at a time. But these guys value the FaceTime. That's what I found out. Did you find that yourself, or did you ever feel like I just didn't feel welcome when I walked in there? It was cold.
Oh, I mean, there's always times where it starts out that way, or it may end that way because the topic didn't go exactly as one, because everybody's not going to be happy, But yeah, I definitely, it was more of a positive experience of doing that, and it's just like we train. We train because you want to do whatever it is before you actually have to do it on an emergency. Because if you're doing it for the first time on an emergency, it's probably not going to go well. The same thing with meeting people or talking to people. If you've talked to them before you actually have to run an emergency with them, it's probably going to go better for both of you. It was definitely worth that hour of my day to go out and spend. And like you said, with as many firehouses as we had, it would made it difficult. And, so you might not see me, but every, 2 or 3 months, depending on what my schedule is and stuff like that. But, you got to get out there and do that.
Yeah, I think it's important that you get face time with your guys, regardless of your rank. I've always said you're never too busy to get out there just to tell them who you are. I've had rookies that had no idea who the shift chief was, because that guy never came out of the office. Obviously, this is after you left, but and I told him, I said, hey, you can't be that way. I said, I've got a rookie who does not know who you are. And I said, that's a bad thing. And I said, you need to make it some time in your day. I said, you are not that busy that you can't get in your vehicle that we give you and come to the station and just introduce yourself and talk and whatnot. And so we broke the ice that way. That's one of the things that they do in Frederick is every Tuesday they have a firehouse they go to. So within 6 to 8 months, they are hitting every firehouse, where they sit down for a couple of hours and just talk stuff. So the whole senior staff goes, assistant chiefs, the deputy chiefs, and the fire chief. They just pick a station every Tuesday. There's a schedule, but and we just sit down and BS. And I think that's important that they get that face time. So we're winding up on the 1 hour mark, but I do want to talk about, you finished your career as the operations chief in Montgomery County. You retired. You had a really good career. You obviously living in the Eastern Shore. So, fast forward, you're volunteering in your local firehouse. There, not a ton of calls over on that end, which is good because you don't want to move to an area that runs a lot of calls. I know you and I volunteered, not at the same time, but we were both at Kentland together. So we kind of ran in those same footsteps of getting that information, that training, working with some really good people. Now, are your kids in the firehouse on the Eastern Shore?
Yeah, the older one, actually, all three of the boys tried the fire service. The older one liked it, but went away to college, so he kind of put it to the side. Middle one gave it a try, but just didn't like it, and the youngest one definitely got the bug like I did, so he was all over the fire service. But went away to college, did 1 year of college, and then he got a job offer with Prince George's County, which he works now. He's coming up on his 3 years. The oldest one finished his 4 years at college, was doing some things and put in same thing for a couple places. He put in for Montgomery, he put in for Baltimore City and PG hired him first. So he's employed by Prince George's County also. So I got two of them down there. So
yeah, cool. So
yeah,
the paramedic
it is
in their
neat.
future, the paramedics program in their future.
Well, with Prince George's County, it's something that they're going to learn that they have to do in order to get promoted, unless the rules change. But as of the way it is now, so it's funny because I talked to some of the people that have retired from there and stuff like that, and they were against it, and for whatever reasons they decided to go with that. And I tried to explain to them that we had some issues with that on our side, and we kind of learned from it. But that's so they'll be a medic sooner or later if they want to get promoted.
Well, they're like worth their weight in gold. So let's fast forward a little bit. So now you've got, you did your retirement. You didn't fail as bad as I did. I did 1 month of retirement, actually less than a month, 6 days of retirement before I got hired. So you did retirement a little bit better than I did. So now you want to talk about your new spot. I know it hasn't been. You said you've been keeping it. It's been kind of quiet, but if you want to talk about it, talk about it.
Yeah, I think I was 6, almost 7 years before I didn't want to cross the bridge again. I liked being over on the Eastern Shore here, so I put in for a couple the local job offerings down there. I tried to put in for Salisbury. I came in second place. Put in for Ocean City, but Richie beat me out on that one. But I wasn't really searching, because like I said, I didn't want to cross the bridge because I'm sure I could have gone somewhere and found something. But this job offering, every once in a while, people would send me stuff. And this job offering came at Dover, and it seemed very, very interesting. They needed to start something. They had it's a 2 stations. It's all volunteers since I can't remember what the date is. It's back in the 1800s. They've been there doing that. But just like any other departments, they have their issues or their struggles. So they know that sooner or later that they're going to have to start adding careers. So they put this position out there, and the appealing part of it was they still wanted you, and you had to actually be a driver or be able to ride the back or go be the incident commander. So I'm like, I got all 3 of those checked. So I still get to do that kind of stuff. So even like today, I worked, I ran 2 or 3 calls on top of going to a budget meeting and going to a mapping meeting. So it's very interesting, and I look forward to it. It's a cool challenge because you're kind of like taking that officership 1, 2, and 3 and putting it all together and get to just to start doing that kind of stuff. So it's neat.
Yeah. Like we talked about offline, you take your fire officer 1, 2, you take fire officer 3, and it's like, Jesus, you're making me, you're teaching me how to build a firehouse from scratch. Who does that? So here you are, building a career system inside of soon to be a combination system from scratch. So, I wish you the best of luck. I know it's a pretty big place for 2 fire departments. They got to keep busy. I know it's when you and I talked a few weeks back, it was something you were looking at. You were looking forward to that. So congratulations on getting that position, and hopefully it's everything you can make it to be, and they give you kind of that free reign, so to speak, to be able to see what your vision is, and then kind of make it that way, and make it into a department that is going to be a good combination system and be aggressive and give the citizens of Dover what they're looking for.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Dave, what you're doing here is just outstanding. I'm so proud to know you, and and I've listened to your other podcasts and stuff like that, and just getting the information out there to people, and because you have to have so many different mediums to get that stuff out there, and this is just great, and you really should be proud of yourself.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule and coming on here, and again, wish you the best of luck. And with that, I'll give you any parting last words, and we'll sign off.
Just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, do it right, and stay safe.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks for coming on the show, and I'll keep tabs on what you're doing over in Dover. And again, my phone line and email is always open. If you ever need anything, you can more than welcome to give me a holler.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care. Thanks for listening to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. You can reach us on the web at www.sidealphaleadership.com. We're on social media, on Instagram at Side Alpha Leadership, on Twitter at Leadership Side, and on Facebook for Side Alpha Leadership.